When I landed my first job in tech, I was overjoyed with the hefty paycheck. But what truly surprised me wasn't the money itself, but how little of it I kept for myself after taxes and my new expenses. It's not something we're taught in school, sadly. So today, I'll share with you how I try to manage and optimize my own software engineering salary. We'll talk about tax advantage accounts, company stock, basic budgeting, and really just how to enjoy life with that new money. However, none of this is any sort of advice. It's just me sharing my own experience and what I've learned about this. With that, let's dive in. Let me take you back to the time when I received my first paycheck from Microsoft. It was a super exciting moment, but it also made me realize the huge responsibility I now had towards managing this money wisely. This led me to explore ways to effectively manage my finances, and one of the first bits of advice that you find out there about this is to maximize 401k contributions. 401k is more than just a retirement plan. It's an opportunity to grow your wealth over time with the added benefit of reducing your taxable income. And here's where it gets even better. If your company matches your contributions, you're essentially getting free money. However, unless you're aiming for financial independence and retiring early, it's important that you balance out your contributions with your lifestyle expenses and your priorities. When I started at Microsoft, I began contributing just enough to get the full company match. Over time, as my salary increased and I got more comfortable with my budgeting skills, I slowly increased those after-tax contributions whenever possible. Striking this balance between saving for tomorrow and living today isn't always easy, but understanding and maximizing your 401k contributions can make a significant difference to your financial health in the long run. Also, when I first joined Microsoft, I was introduced to the concept of an employee stock purchase plan, or ESPP. It allows employees to purchase company stock at a discount, usually around 10 to 15%. A portion of your salary is deducted for this purpose over a certain period of time. At the end of that period, the accumulated funds are used to buy shares at the discounted price. If your company offers this benefit, it can be a significant wealth builder. If the company performs well, that is, since there are risks involved too. If you invest too heavily in your company's stock and the company's fortune take a turn for the worse, you could lose a substantial amount of money. Remember the timeless personal finance advice to not put all of your eggs in one basket. Placing too much of your portfolio in any one single investment is always risky. So how do we balance this then? The generic answer is to just diversify. Spreading your investments across different types of assets reduces some of that risk. One approach could be using part of your ESPP benefits to invest elsewhere or contribute to your savings account. And the truth is, I'm sharing this as something I've learned as part of my journey, but as something that I really haven't implemented very well myself. I'm still hoarding quite a bit of Microsoft stock, but I've been recently trying to improve that and diversify my investments a bit more. The reason that it took me a while to do this is that there are some implications when you sell stocks. Depending on the time you held that stock or how much money you earn or lose from it, you'll face different tax implications. Because of this, some people have systematized their ESPP strategies and sell immediately after they receive the shares, capturing the guaranteed return from the discount. Others hold on longer, betting on future appreciation and accepting the associated risk with it. The way I've been approaching this now is that ESPP is just another tool in our financial toolkit. It's an opportunity to grow our wealth quicker than some other investments might allow, but with an associated risk. Embarking on a high-paying tech job is definitely exciting, but with big paychecks also come big responsibilities. Once we actually start talking about your take-home pay, that is, after taxes, 401k contributions, and ESPP, the most fundamental step is to budget for your lifestyle costs. When I first moved to Seattle, setting up my own space was one of the most exciting things I could have done, but also a really challenging one in terms of finances. Rent, furniture, groceries, bills, all of these living costs start adding up quickly. Thankfully, I had a bit of savings built from my prior internships, but the interesting part wasn't just being able to pay them off. I really wanted to understand the new categories that I was about to start spending money on and accounting for them to make sure I could afford it. Yes, tech paychecks can be big, but so does the cost of living close to these offices. This was the first time I felt the weight of financial responsibility that came with a higher income. Budgeting, though, isn't just about the boring process of of covering your necessities. It's also about ensuring that you don't compromise on your quality of life. It's an exercise where you identify the things that are important for you and you make sure there's space for them in your wallet. This is probably the biggest takeaway from my favorite personal finance book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which I highly recommend if you're just getting started. When I was starting out, I found it helpful to begin listing all of my known monthly expenses, rent, utility bills, groceries, and then I factored in some amount for unforeseen costs. And once I had accounted for these essential expenses and savings goals, I allocated what remained towards this guilt-free spending category that we'll talk more about in a second. The goal was to ensure that I was living within my means while still enjoying the things I love. Keep in mind that this process isn't set in stone. As your circumstances change, so should your budget. The key is to remain flexible and keep reassessing your needs and wants. A good budget should serve as a guide that helps you live more comfortably within your means while also securing your future. It shouldn't ever be something you feel imprisoned by. You own this budget and it's a tool. Sometimes you'll use it and sometimes you'll fail to stick with it. But your relationship with that budget, I'd argue, is even more important than the budget itself. Rewards don't always have to be a big purchase or an expensive vacation. It could be as simple as grabbing a latte in the morning or a single weekend getaway. The key is to include this in your budget so that you can enjoy the expenses without any guilt, knowing that you're not compromising your financial stability. Early after moving here, a lot of my weekends were often spent hanging out with friends, eating out, and exploring the little bit of nightlife that this city had to offer. While it was certainly fun, I noticed how quickly some of these were eating into my salary. Now, instead of completely cutting them off, I started just planning for them and my budget. I didn't always get it right and I often overspent, but with time, it definitely get better. Well, as better as it could get in 6 months because, well, soon after that we got locked down and my going out spending dipped to zero. But it was also during the pandemic that this concept took on a new meaning for me. Being stuck inside, I picked up new hobbies like bodyweight training, photography, and of course, Animal Crossing. I suddenly had a bit of a sandboxed period of time in which I had a bit more money to save or spend in other activities that brought me joy. And as we slowly transitioned back to normalcy after the lockdown, the habit of planning for leisure spending stuck. I now keep a spreadsheet with my available balance for this category, and I split it among specific categories in YNAB to make it easy to track that spending. This is really all about balance, allowing yourself the freedom to indulge in what makes you happy while ensuring it doesn't impede your long-term financial goals. While 401k contributions and ESPP are really good things to take advantage of as early as you can, I eventually learned that it's probably a good idea to take it easy on investments using already taxed money and regular investment accounts. That is because the former accounts are tax advantaged, and any investment that you make outside of these accounts will kind of get you taxed twice. So what I decided to do is instead focus my take-home pay on two things: guilt-free spending and savings. There's one exception to this that I will mention in a second though. A high-yield savings account can be a good starting point for building an emergency fund or saving for short-term goals. These accounts typically offer higher interest rates than traditional ones, allowing your money to grow even when it's sitting idle. Aiming for 3 to 6 months worth of expenses and savings is what is often recommended, but the exact amount will definitely depend on your own situation and risk tolerance. The way I treat savings is in terms of those two categories that I mentioned: my emergency fund and short-term savings. I don't really keep two separate accounts for each, but I do budget specific amounts for each in YNAB. For short-term saving goals, I basically treat it as one bucket or slice of my monthly salary, so I know that I will always set apart X percentage of my paycheck and transfer that into my savings account. The thing that's great about this is that once you know what that amount is for you, you can set up automatic transfers and have that amount withdrawn from your checking account and into your savings account without you having to do anything. And more importantly, without you even getting the chance to spend that money. That way, you know you have your saving goals covered, and every time you go into your checking account, you know that the money you see there is safe to use for your fixed costs and guilt-free spending. The exception to the after-tax investment rule that I mentioned is annual bonuses. Since when I do my early budgeting, I don't really account for any bonus. When I do get one though, I use part of it to treat myself to something, but most of it I'll then invest in index funds in a regular taxable account. It's not as effective as those retirement tax-advantaged accounts that we just talked about, but since I didn't even expect to get that money, it's still a win in my book, and I can have that money grow alongside the market. As my understanding of personal finance grew deeper, I discovered more advanced strategies such as backdoor Roth contributions, HSA as an investment account, and optimizing stock sales to avoid short-term gains. Topics that are super interesting, but I also didn't have enough time to cover today. If that is something that is interesting to you, please let me know by liking this video and I'll start to work on part 2. In the meantime, what you can immediately start doing is avoiding the same money mistakes that I made in my career. I talk all about this in this video here in case you're looking for something to watch next. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.